observation that data is very often trapped in spreadsheets. And the data is created and managed by people who are not engineers. And so this creates a constraint on the accessibility of that data, which means a lot of potentially useful tools are not being built with it. So what we did is we built two API to streamline making this data accessible and useful. And app developers can sign up for our service to make it easy to ingest that type of data and integrate it into the apps. So we're going to show you an example. As a developer, I would sign into the console here. Ignore that, we have a bad security flaw. So imagine that we work with the city of Seattle, and we're working with the Department of Transportation here, and we want to create a map of traffic incidents. And we want to give the ability of our fellow employees to be able to just drop a spreadsheet into a website and then have the data on a map populated. Thanks. So we have here all of their API access information, and we have a place where they can test that. So this is a spreadsheet with that information pulled from the city of Seattle. We'll start the upload, and really quickly we'll see it get pushed into here. But just to show that it's CSV, you can see how it's formatted here. This is standard CSV. Once this is uploaded, this map will get populated. Wi-Fi. So anyways, we want to point out that it's not restricted to traffic data. You can drop any kind of geolocation data into there as long as you properly integrated it with your app. And then you can create any number of kinds of apps with it. So it doesn't have to just be maps. It can be a variety of other things. All right.
Market data.
Sorry?
Market data uploaded.
So it should appear to.
You market size?
How are they going to pay for it?
Yeah, sure.
Are you going to get 10,000 people?
Yeah, so we would primarily focus on developers because they're the ones that would be using our system. We haven't had time to think through the full business model, but there are a variety of approaches we could take. We would most likely either charge directly, or we could do something else where we would charge them based on the number of times their data is getting access and so forth. So if they're not using it, then we're not charging them. We have a couple ideas around getting it out there. So with the GitHub model, we could host data for free as long as they make it public. If you want private, we could put a wall around it, and then we would charge them for that. So we don't know exactly what route we take, but we try a couple of those. With respect to interest, we also didn't really have a lot of validation time, but in terms of interacting just with people at the hackathon, a number of people said, oh, that would actually be useful to ours, and they showed us their spreadsheet and how they had tried to pull that spreadsheet information into their product. With marketing, it's probably going to be the developer evangelist playbook. So as pioneered by Twilio and so forth. And then some ideas around product hunts and so forth. I wouldn't say we have product market fit right now. So in terms of high scale growth, it's not going to make sense at this point. We're going to want to focus on initial customers and really get ramped up and make sure that we're meeting their needs right before we invest too much in high scale growth.
So in thinking through who those first customers would be, trying to find product market fit, what's your thesis on who you're going to go to that's going to want to pay you money for this as soon as possible, without taking the, build evangelists and a whole community of developers, but just get out there and make some money on this?
So the target that I initially look at is developers that are sitting next to marketing or sales teams or folks like that, where the people who need access to the data or some permutation of the data don't have developer hats to wear, right? They don't have that background. And so they're really working primarily out of spreadsheets, and that's going to be their way to get data into the system. And so those developers don't want to necessarily take that hours or a day of time to take all that data, especially when you look at a file like this. This was like 20 megabytes. And so getting all of that into the system would take a lot of effort. So focusing on them, focusing on places like City of Seattle, we do think this is kind of an interesting use case. So.
Do you see, there are a lot of tools that don't do this necessarily. Lots of developer tools, anywhere from $99 to $499 for the license and unlimited, right? So is this one of that class of tool, or do you see this as a different model?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, I've used tools like Aviary, which is an image-specific uploader tool, which gives you a nice little cropping tool and identifies the image once it's up. There's FilePicker.io, just like a generic file uploader. And these are services that you drop into your app.
But
And-
very many of those, not all of them, but very many of them are free.
Yeah, they have a freemium model, and then usually it's about like a $30 first year. So the freemium models to get your hackathon project working, $30 is about like a small load, and then it goes all the way until like call us, we'll put together an enterprise model for you. Just standard kind of pricing table. And the thing is with like AWS infrastructure, we only take 100 customers to really cover our infrastructure costs. And once you're at like 500 customers, you can probably pay for a dev part-time or full-time rate on this.
Yeah, so the processing is not too compute intensive and hosting it. Like S3 is so cheap, we could host a ton of data. And so like the margin on access would probably be pretty interesting. I'm not gonna pretend like we know what the right pricing model would be. But we'd probably, almost certainly, just given the nature of developer tools, we'd have to have a freemium tier and then do pricing above that.
Is it only geolocated data, or is it not other, what other kinds of projections besides CSV geodata do you have in mind?
Yeah, ultimately, we'd like to be able to just drop in Excel, which everyone works in, or any other format. We started playing around with the idea of using some of these APIs where you could do machine intelligence to identify tables and then break those down, so you could drop your PDF in and it would pull the tables out. So in the longer term, we'd like to do a lot of that. And we'd even like to use machine intelligence to be able to, for example, predict what a column should be, what a particular field in a table should be if it's missing. So that also reduces that burden of having to clean up the data. So it's more automated.
So I should be able to take my Excel, drag it over to my Firebase object, and if I've got a Firebase data with page to call it in.
Correct. Yeah, more or less.
We use
Yeah.
Firebase, and it's a web hook. The data got pushed directly there. Once it's uploaded.
One comment, there's a ton of good data out there on the amount of data that's stuck in spreadsheets, and definitely integrate that into your presentation. It's really hard to fathom how much data is in spreadsheets. It's not in databases, and it's not structured, and it's not very well wrangled. So I think that's a big part of your value proposition, is to make people understand the volume of data that's
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, and actually, something that's interesting, there are companies that are doing the data wrangling side of things, but they're focused more on large data sets, right? So massive terabyte data sets or gigabyte data sets. I'm just going on the fly because I just thought of this, but one of the hard things with a small data set is you don't have as much information to make an intelligent prediction of what a field should be. But if you're able to go across many, many small data sets, you might be able to make an intelligent prediction about what a missing field should be. So there might be some power in that, if we were able to get enough people on the system and get the data populated.
So most of the time with databases, people are not as precise as programmers about putting the data in. And there's some kind of cleaning you have to do
Yeah.
to normalize the data to something rational. You approach that question.
Yeah, so we haven't done that yet. And so my domain expertise is not in that area, but I am familiar. I know there is research and there are actually products out that have that built in. So I know it's feasible. The degree of quality is the big question, right? So like if you have a giant training data set, you could probably get a pretty high quality result. If you have a small training set, it's going to be less accurate. I think we probably, given the market that we've kind of described, we probably don't want to do something where we force the user to interact and scrub the data themselves or to train the system. We want it to just be super, like the whole thing is to be super simple, right? So there are going to be cases where we're not going to have the answer. And so the best thing might be to, like, if this row is missing a critical field and we can't make a good guess about it, just eliminate the row.
I think that Google has a tool that does this, and I'm struggling with the name, but I'll try to.
Like the TensorFlow stuff that they
No,
have.
it starts with an R. It's for journalists to take the straight website and turn it into spreadsheet.
Ah, okay. We'll try and find that.
Well, thanks, Ed.
Thank you.